See your son Hakeem Robinson in the courtroom here today.
Yes.
Can you tell us where he's seated and what he is wearing?
He's seated between the two lawyers right there with a beige suit on. I got some health issues. I got 2 6-year-olds and an 8-year-old daughter.
Who is the person that was captured on the video recording shooting Charles McCormick?
My son.
What's your son's name?
Hakeem.
Ksoo just got life, but the wildest part wasn't the jury or the evidence. It was his own father walking into court and putting him there. This wasn't some random street dude who flipped for a lighter sentence. This was Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's pops, the man who raised him, drove him to football games and taught him how to move in the streets. On the stand, pointing straight at his own blood, giving prosecutors the inside story they needed to bury him forever. And that's not even the craziest part, because when you hear why he did it and how deep this family war runs, you'll realize Ksoo never stood a chance. Jacksonville's drill scene has seen its share of violence, but nothing like this. This wasn't just a murder trial. It was a public family execution, carried out under courtroom lights. 3.5 hours. That's all it took for 12 strangers to look over the evidence, whisper among themselves, decide Hakeem Ksoo Robinson was guilty of first-degree murder. No drawn-out deliberations, no drama, just a quick decision that sealed his fate forever. Imagine spending years building an image on social media, rapping about bodies, disrespecting ops, posting like you were untouchable, only for your future to be decided faster than it takes to binge a season of Power. For Ksoo, that guilty verdict hit harder than any diss track. This was the consequence he'd been rapping about, except it wasn't a bar anymore. It was a booking number and a prison ID. The trial had already been a circus. Prosecutors didn't just come in with a theory. They came in with what felt like a movie script. They painted Ksoo, his cousin Leroy, ATK Scotty Whitaker, and Dominique Buddha Barner as cold, calculated hunters, plotting their target's death like they were organizing a neighborhood barbecue. According to the state, they even used the Duval County Clerk of Court's website, the same site your grandma uses to pay traffic tickets, to pull up Charles Lil Buck McCormick's home address. Once they had it, the plan was in motion. And the evidence? The kind of stuff that makes defense attorneys lose sleep. Surveillance video showing a masked shooter chasing McCormick through Dames Point Plaza like it was a horror movie. A stolen Nissan Altima, abandoned after the hit, inside it a rifle with Ksoo's fingerprints and a t-shirt with his DNA. It was like robbing a bank and leaving your wallet behind. The type of mistake you can't talk your way out of in court. The defense tried. They argued the shooter in the footage was too small to be Ksoo. Witnesses described someone around 5 feet 8 inches, maybe 5 feet 9 inches, while Ksoo stands a lanky 6 feet 3 inches. They brought up body type, claiming the masked figure was slimmer. They even pulled out 3D imaging tech to back up the point. But here's the thing. Fancy graphics don't change the fact that jurors were staring at forensic evidence and hearing testimony from people who said they were there. That's a tough wall to climb. Then there was the Instagram problem. Prosecutors claimed Ksoo couldn't resist flexing about the murder online, posting cryptic captions that sounded less like rap lyrics and more like victory laps. The defense tried to spin it. Artistic expression, just part of the culture, but the jury wasn't buying it. In their eyes, those posts were another piece of the puzzle, a digital trail pointing straight to him. Even with all that, the real damage wasn't from the footage, the DNA, or the social media. The true knockout punch was still waiting in the wings. A witness the jury never saw coming. Someone who knew the players, the politics, and the motive better than anyone else in that courtroom. And when that person walked in, the case stopped being about circumstantial evidence. It became personal. From the moment the trial started, prosecutors built their case like they were painting a masterpiece, every brushstroke adding to the picture of Ksoo as the trigger man. They opened with the surveillance footage, grainy but clear enough to show a masked figure sprinting after Charles McCormick through Dames Point Plaza, rifle in hand. Jurors watched as the gunman closed in, the same way a predator stalks prey, before firing the fatal shots in broad daylight. It was the kind of visual that stays burned into your mind, and the prosecution made sure the jury replayed it in their heads over and over. Then came the Altima. The stolen Nissan became a crime scene on wheels, abandoned after the murder. Inside, detectives found a rifle, not just any rifle, but one carrying Ksoo's fingerprints, and a t-shirt with his DNA. Forensics made the connection instantly. It didn't matter how the defense tried to explain it away. The jury could see the chain, the stolen car, the murder, the rifle, the DNA. It was the kind of evidence that doesn't just whisper guilt, it screams it. But the state didn't stop there. They brought out McCormick's final moments on cell tower records, showing how the suspect's phones pinged near his apartment for hours before the shooting. They traced movements movements from the stakeout to the plaza where McCormick was killed. Then they introduced Dominique Butt, the man they said drove the getaway car.
Yes, sir.
What kind of firearm did you have?
A Glock 23.
A handgun?
Yes, sir.
And what about Leroy Whitaker?
He had a rifle.
Barner's testimony was like opening a direct line into the plot. He claimed the three of them, himself, Ksoo, and ATK Scotty, had stalked McCormick, waiting for the right moment to hit. He described the hours spent outside McCormick's apartment, the slow tail to the plaza, and the moment Ksoo stepped out with the rifle. To the jury, it sounded like the kind of detailed account only someone on the inside could give. The defense went hard at him. They told the jury Barner was a career criminal, a man who would say anything to save his own skin. They reminded everyone he had a pending murder case and had cut a deal to dodge a life sentence in both. They called him a liar, a paid assassin with no honor, the kind of witness you couldn't trust to tell you the time of day. But despite their attacks, the image of him calmly pointing at Ksoo in court saying, "That's the man who did it," stuck in the jury's mind. Still, Barner wasn't the endgame. He was just the opening act. Because while his testimony gave the state the mechanics of the murder, their next witness was going to give them something even stronger: motive and betrayal so deep it would gut the defense from the inside out. And when that witness took the stand, every eye in the courtroom locked in. This wasn't just another cooperator, this was blood. When the bailiff called the next witness, the defense already knew they were in trouble. Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's father, walked to the stand, not in cuffs, not in orange, but in a suit, the kind of suit you wear when you've already cut your deal. He didn't glance at his son, didn't nod, didn't offer a look that said, "I got you." The man who had once been the anchor of Ksoo's life was now about to become the prosecution's MVP. The courtroom went still. The jurors knew they were about to hear something rare, a father testifying against his own blood in a murder trial. And Abdul Sr. didn't come to play coy. He laid it all out. He told them his sons were ATK, a gang prosecutor said had been in a deadly war with 6 Block. He confirmed the motive, that Charles McCormick had disrespected the family by dropping a diss track about Willie Addison, Ksoo's half-brother, a year after Willie was murdered in a drive-by.
This diss track made by McCormick.
But Abdul didn't stop at words. He put himself right in the middle of the aftermath. According to his testimony, after the shooting, he picked up Leroy ATK Scotty Whitaker and Dominique Buta Barner. He learned McCormick was dead, and instead of driving them to the police, he helped them get away. He even admitted to burning bloody clothes behind a Burger King, treating a murder cleanup like it was trash day. The defense tried to paint him as self-serving, a man saving his own skin. They told the jury Abdul was only there because of a plea deal, one that cut his potential 60-year sentence down to 20. They said he was sick, dealing with kidney failure, and that his real motivation was to see his young daughter again before his time ran out. They pushed the idea that his testimony was bought and paid for in years of freedom. Abdul didn't deny it. He told the court straight he did what he had to do. He wanted to be there for his little girl, to go to a father-daughter dance, to be part of her life while he still had time. To him, the math was simple. One son had already made his choice, and another child still had a chance. But to the jury, his reasoning didn't erase the impact of his words. Here was a father saying his own flesh and blood was part of a calculated, cold-blooded killing. Here was the man who raised Ksoo, giving the state exactly what they needed to tie the threads together: motive, gang politics, and first-hand knowledge of the cover-up. For Ksoo, it was over before the cross-examination even started. The jury didn't just hear evidence anymore, they heard it from someone who knew him better than anyone. And if your own father says you did it, how do you come back from that? To understand why this case cut so deep, you have to rewind a year before Charles McCormick was killed. January 15th, 2019, the day the Robinson family's world blew apart. That afternoon, Willie Addison, known in the streets as Boss Goon, was riding in a truck with family. Abdul Sr. was behind the wheel. Willie was in the passenger seat. In the back sat Abdul Jr., another nephew, and Torgan Pooh Red Willie. Just a regular ride through Jacksonville, until it wasn't. Multiple shooters opened fire, riddling the vehicle with bullets. Chaos, blood everywhere. Willie slumped in the front, making a choking sound, struggling to breathe. Abdul Sr. was hit too, but he kept his hands on the wheel, racing to the hospital while holding Willie's hand, trying to let him know he wasn't alone in his final moments. That drive ended with Willie gone, Abdul Jr. fighting for his life, and the rest of the family left with wounds you couldn't see. The aftermath was brutal. Abdul Jr. had been shot in the head and spent months in the hospital. When he got out, he had to relearn how to walk, talk, and function again. The whole family was living with the weight of that day, and for Ksoo, even though he wasn't in the car, it was personal. Watching his brother almost die, watching his family break, it planted something in him: anger, resentment, a need for payback. Then came the song. Charles "Lil Buck" McCormick, a rapper tied to 6 Block, TK's sworn rivals, dropped a diss track about Willie Addison. It wasn't subtle. It was a direct shot at a dead man the Robinsons loved, recorded and released for everyone to hear. In Jacksonville's street politics, that wasn't just disrespect, it was war. The second that track hit, Ksoo and his brother brought it to their father. "Pops, he's talking crazy about Willie," they told him. The wound from 2019 hadn't healed. Now, it was wide open again, and salt was being poured straight into it. Gang politics made it worse. ATK and 6 Block weren't just on bad terms. They were in an ongoing, bloody feud where every disrespect had to be answered. McCormick's track wasn't just a personal insult. It was a public declaration that 6 Block wasn't scared of ATK. That kind of message couldn't go unanswered without looking weak. Abdul Sr. testified that both his sons were furious. When prosecutors asked who had the most desire to retaliate, he didn't hesitate. Both of them. It wasn't one hot-headed decision. It was a shared mission. A year of grief and anger boiled over, and now there was a target. From that moment, the clock started ticking. And when McCormick stepped out of a staffing agency at Dames Point Plaza on January 15th, 2020, exactly 1 year to the day after Willie was killed, Ksoo and his crew were waiting. January 15th, 2020, the 1-year anniversary of Willie Addison's murder. For most families, that date would be about remembrance. For ATK, it was about revenge. According to prosecutors, the plan started before McCormick even left his apartment. Dominique Buddha Barner told the court they used the Duval County Clerk of Court's website to find his address. They parked outside, waiting for hours. When McCormick finally stepped out and got into his car, they followed. The tail led them across town to Dames Point Plaza. Surveillance cameras captured what happened next. McCormick parked and started walking. The stolen Nissan Altima rolled in. A masked figure stepped out, rifle in hand, and gave chase. People in the plaza scattered as shots rang out. Witnesses later said the gunman stood over McCormick and fired the final rounds before running back to the car. It was the kind of daylight execution you usually only see in movies, but this one was all too real. They took off in the Altima, but the escape went sideways. Police spotted the stolen car and gave chase. The pursuit ended in a crash and chaos. Barner and Whitaker ran into a nearby home, while Ksoo split off in another direction. Inside the car, detectives found the rifle with Ksoo's fingerprints, a t-shirt with his DNA, and shell casings matching the scene. By the time the case hit trial in 2025, the jury wasn't just looking at the plaza shooting in isolation. Prosecutors tied it directly to gang politics, to Willie Addison's death, and to a revenge motive that had been building for a year. The date of the murder, and exactly 1 year later, wasn't a coincidence, they said. It was a message, and as bad as this looked for Ksoo, this wasn't the only storm hanging over him. Another murder case, this one involving the 2019 killing of 16-year-old Adrian Lil Bibby Gaynor Jr., was still on deck. That trial, prosecutors warned, would follow a similar blueprint. Eyewitness testimony, gang rivalry as motive, and one devastating constant: the return of his father to the witness stand. If the Charles McCormick case was a knockout punch, the Adrian Lil Bibby Gaynor Jr. trial could be the final blow. Gaynor was just 16 when he was killed in 2019, a year before McCormick. Prosecutors say his death was part of the same ATK 6 Block feud, another move in a war where the scoreboard was measured in bodies. And just like the McCormick trial, they planned to call Abdul Robinson Sr. to the stand. That means the same man who helped bury his son in one courtroom will do it again in another. If convicted, Ksoo would be staring at a second life sentence. No parole, no appeals strong enough to break through the wall of witness testimony and forensic evidence stacked against him. This is bigger than one rapper or one gang. Jacksonville's drill scene has been feeding off the Chicago blueprint for years. The same mix of music, social media, and street politics that made stars out of King Von and Chief Keef. But with that blueprint came the same deadly pressure to not just rap about violence, but to live it. In that world, a diss track isn't just music, it's a challenge. And backing down isn't an option if you want to keep your reputation. For Ksoo, that mindset built his brand in and destroyed him. The lyrics, the posts, the taunts, they all became receipts prosecutors could cash in at trial. And with the Lil Bibby case looming, it's clear the cycle doesn't end when the music stops. In Jacksonville, the beat goes on. When the guilty verdict dropped on July 31st, 2025, it wasn't just Ksoo who took that L. His family lost a son and brother. Charles McCormick's people got a sliver of justice, but no one was celebrating because the streets don't give life back. And for Jacksonville, it was another reminder that the drill scene's biggest moments too often end with funerals and prison sentences. Under Florida law, first-degree murder means life without parole. At his age, Ksoo will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars, all because he couldn't let a song slide. The irony? For all the talk of money and status in his music, he told the court he had just $1,000 to his name before he got locked up. No mansion, no cars, just a reputation that couldn't save him when it mattered most. The part people will never forget isn't just the crime, it's who stood in that witness box. It's the moment a father pointed at his son and gave the state the keys to the cell. Blood betrayal on full display, not in some back alley, but under the bright lights of a courtroom, with the whole city watching. For Ksoo, the music has stopped, the cameras are off, and all that's left is the echo of a life that could have gone a different way if the streets hadn't won.